All right. Thank you again for joining us today at Psych Your Way to Success. I am Claire,
I am Heather.
and we are basically Psych Your Way to Success is, you know, um, Heather and I exploring the mysteries of business world through the lens of IO psychology. So, if you're ever curious about what IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology is, we encourage you to listen to episode 1 or just Google it. It's actually pretty interesting. So, I like to shorten it up and say it's corporate psychology. That's my version of explanation. But
Right, because it's
today,
a mouthful.
it is too much to say. It's really it's too much, really. But it does encompass quite a bit. So I guess that's the reason. Today we get to talk about the topic of, and again, once again, somebody was bringing it to us, remote work. The challenges, the benefits. We get to talk about both of those. So Heather, do you want to lead us off with some of the challenges that you found? You've done remote work, obviously. Um, what are some of the challenges that you find, or kick us off there?
Yeah, I mean, I think remote work became really popular during COVID, right? I mean, we
I.e.,
can't,
necessary.
I don't think there's a single person who hasn't done some sort of remote work, whether it's even performers. I saw a lot of performances during remote work. There were even clubs that did like remote clubs. I
Hmm.
felt like I saw the big gamut of remote type of work during COVID. And so people I think got used to it and got like familiar with it. And a lot of companies wanted to embrace it. But what's interesting about it is it's hard to create those same team dynamics on remote work. And it's not that it's impossible, it's just different. And there has to be different tactics and different ways to handle the challenge. And so I would say what I saw for myself is one of the biggest problems is how exhausting a Zoom call is. You could sit in a movie, you can sit in a physical meeting for 4 hours, but
Yep.
a remote meeting for 1 hour just seems exhausting for
It's
whatever reason. I don't know.
tiresome.
It is. And in fact, I read a few articles that Harvard had published about remote work and how um, more exhausting those meetings are than a physical meeting. And in my opinion, I would say it has to do with that lack of connection because really when you're like we are right now, actually, I mean,
Right.
this is obviously remote work, at physical touch, there's not that like in the same space, the energy, because you
Oh,
feed
there it
off of
is.
someone's energy is what I
Yep.
I guess what I'm saying, because it's not like you're touching during a meeting.
Nope.
But but
We have some HR issues if that's happening,
it's definitely
everybody.
not happening.
That should stop.
I don't know why I said touch, but I meant like, the energy, and you get like revived and excited about being around people. And so I think there's that aspect. Also, it's hard to like maintain a work-life balance when you're at home
Wait, I need
working.
to go do the laundry real quick. Or
It's so true. I
all
just
the
have
things
one more
around my
meeting.
house I need to do.
Right. And because it's not dependent on a 9 to 5, you really
Hmm.
can have a meeting at any time. Like it's just,
Yeah.
and during COVID, I would do it all the time. Like people would be like, in China or in Australia or something, and they would be like, oh, can you meet at, midnight my time, 4 a.m. your time? I'm like, totally.
There you go.
But it's like, it actually doesn't work that well because then there's no downtime and there's no like, oh, this is my home. Um,
So I would definitely that, not to interject or anything, but I think what you're talking about is boundaries here, and having healthy boundaries around your work and home life become really difficult. Yeah.
exactly. And so I think that there is So I think that that's interesting. Also, I think the impact on the mental health. I was always so curious about this because there's not that you're not going to the quote unquote water cooler to like get water and connect with people on a different level. I also saw that like it's really hard to connect with your superiors because everybody is in the same meeting. You're not like running into them in the hall. There's no like, Claire, can you help me with this real quick? You
Right.
know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you have to call someone physically. Yeah, yeah.
And like connect on Zoom and maybe they're, and it's a little bit, honestly, I think it's a little bit of an invasion of privacy in some aspect. Someone is in your home, and I don't know about you, but I like my home to be my safe space.
This is my home.
Yeah, and I want to people that I want in my home, I want to like invite them instead of like on Zoom they can see your background and maybe you put up a
The
fake
fuzzy
background or
background or
whatever.
fake background.
But then that even seems weird. Like it's just like I don't um it's tough. So
Yeah.
I would say that also the distractions at home. When your kids are home, like mine are today, I'm like, don't come down. Or, you know,
I'm in a
like
meeting.
yeah,
Yes.
or they'll like come and I had my kids, they would like crawl on the ground and be like tap my toe. And then I'm trying to pay attention to the meeting, trying to
Hmm.
like not be like not make them feel important or whatever, and trying to help them with whatever they need. But then you're like half doing everything and it's stressful. That's really stressful. And
Sure.
then they get upset because you're not paying attention to them or,
Yeah.
this or that. So I think there's like lots of different
Yeah.
aspects with that there's no it's really hard to like stay focused at home.
Absolutely. I think like the things you brought up, we really got used to it. The team dynamics are really difficult. Um, Zoom is absolutely exhausting. There's no two ways about that. I agree with you 100%. Um, Lack of boundaries between your home life, I think really sums up a lot of the things that I would have said as well. And then mental health. I actually had to physically start getting up in the morning, going over to my neighbor's house, having a cup of coffee with them, and then come back to work. And it made me feel like I was in the workplace.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
the little things that I had to do to make sure, and then put it on a calendar like this is when I can take a break or my lunch or whatever. And these are the things I can do on them rather than, use my brain and like, oh, I'm going to do this and 5,000 other things and then accomplish nothing. Right. Like it definitely has its challenges. Um, Jumping over to benefits though, with each of those challenges, which I'm sure if any of you guys out there listening have had them, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any further additions to that'd be great to hear from you. But the benefits, and I would say there's benefits to both the business and to the person. Like, did you find what are some of your top benefits? Like, what are your top three?
I mean, one of my favorite benefit is you can work from anywhere. you
Yes.
know so it's like, with my like wanderlust personality, it was like I could be anywhere in the world really and
Hmm.
still get my stuff done and still be present and not feel like I have to choose between traveling and going to work. So I think that is huge. That's actually also a benefit to a company to not have a physical location where you have to pay an
Brick and mortar.
absorbent amount of, exactly, like you're not paying for, everybody has their own laptop at this point, they all, they're, all their own network issues and this and that. I think there's a lot of benefits to that. Like when the network would go down in a physical location, now everybody is unproductive.
Yes, very true.
But when it's remote, maybe there's one or two people who are not productive. It doesn't affect the whole company. And so the whole company's not shut down for until the internet is back up or this or that. And so, like, also that, like, really minimize your IT department because you realize how much you ask help from the IT department for things that are like irrelevant, right? Like you could really figure out yourself. You just are maybe lazy or don't understand it. And so um there's a lot of like self like working on it, also because you're not in the physical location, there's less distraction from your employees, right? Like or
Yeah,
together, right? You're not all hanging out by the water cooler, which I think is awesome, but can also be distracting and not allow you to get your work done as much, you know?
coming from a talker over here, I can tell you how much I distracted myself at work by having hallway conversations and decisions that were solving the world's problems just by, running into each other, going from one office to the next.
Exactly. So like I think there's like all of those benefits I see as like such a big benefit, There's like,
Yeah,
there's lots of cost savings to not have a physical location. Um
totally.
and you're connecting with more people that you wouldn't, especially from a manager's perspective or a leader's perspective. Now
Mhm.
you have to physically, or you have to like intentionally connect with each one of the people that you're working with. And so I felt like you really got to know people a lot better because there is more effort to understand what they're doing, what their
Mhm.
challenges are, like where they're getting stuck. Like I think it forces that instead of just kind of being in the same area and assuming things.
Well, and that kind of brings me to my next point where I was kind of curious. I've heard from a lot of people, and I don't know about you, that they actually feel like Big Brother's watching way more, and maybe not just Big Brother, like Big Brother being their organization, the owners, their bosses. They're watching way more what they're doing, and they're having to account way more for their time. Whereas in the office, that wasn't the case.
Mm-mm.
So we're using programs like um, the screen videoing or the screen monitoring where on your laptop, if you're not moving your mouse or typing for a certain length of time longer than 30 seconds to a minute, then it's capturing your inactivity, right? And I think you have to even write down or let it know sometimes with some organizations and some platforms that you're going to use a restroom before you leave your laptop. So it just seems incredibly more restrictive, and though I would consider that a challenge, but it's making people feel not trusted, right?
100%.
So I think there's layers to that aspect, that it's a huge benefit, but there's drawbacks to that benefit. And even though those weren't our initial challenges, it's interesting how these things are playing back and forth. I don't know. I don't know. I'm hearing from a lot of people at least that
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you think about that even with, yeah, you can see how long someone's been on whatever.
yeah,
And I think there is a little bit of big brotherness to that. And it's true, which is good and bad. So those people who are not very effective or doing nothing, it's very clear, like
right.
you can't, um, but I also think it's interesting because I do think that there's some benefit of having downtime. I know that I really appreciate going on walks outside, and I feel like being home or remote, I can do that so much easier than when you're in a physical location. It's a lot harder to walk.
That's
And so
crazy.
sometimes,
I
yeah,
find the opposite.
really. I
Yeah.
because I'm in like a big business building and there's nowhere to walk around there. So I like to walk in my neighborhood and just like get outside and think. And then
Yep.
I come back and usually have solved a problem by the end of it. And usually I'm not wearing like heels and a fancy
Oh,
suit.
yeah, no, and most of us that are going to work aren't always
Office.
having to wear heels and a suit and everything necessarily.
But that's what
Um,
I wear at the office. So it's not
yeah,
as easy to walk there than at home. I can easily quickly change, or like sometimes I'm not even dressed, right? Like, I mean, I'm just in workout clothes.
sure.
So I can just like go out the door, take a 30-minute walk and come back and be regrounded. But you find it easier when you're at the office?
I actually find it easier when I'm at the office because first off, they know I'm at work, right? So I don't feel bad walking away from
Mm,
work. And I find it so much harder to, even if I'm sitting in front of my computer at home, being completely unproductive, I'm in front of my computer and I feel like I am then justifying my time. Now, if I've physically gone into work and used the office, then if I go for a walk, I'm like, I'm fine with that. And yes, it is actually way more productive for me to do it that way. Like a lot of these places, like shared workspaces that are popping up and have been popping up, obviously, all throughout COVID, I found to be incredibly helpful for me sometimes because I was like, I'm physically going in. I feel like I've been productive. Whereas I get done with work here and I'm like, I can keep going. And next thing you know, it's like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, well, and I don't feel like I accomplished much. And oh, by the way, my Apple Watch is telling me that I haven't like stood all day or, and you know, it's crazy how I like totally the opposite for me. It's
interesting.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is funny.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'll wake up earlier in the morning and I'll take the dogs for a walk and go do the thing. And then I'll come back and I'm like, okay, I'm set. And I feel refreshed and this is great. And I have at it on the computer, but it doesn't feel like I can do that midday. Like I feel almost irresponsible if I do it. And obviously not everybody feels that way, but yeah, that's really interesting. I love the
That's
differences.
I do too. Yeah, so it's like that's why I like the idea of this hybrid solution where
Yep.
you can work from home and you have a physical location because I do see a benefit of getting people together. Even when people were fully remote, I would always tell people that it's good to get the team together in a
Mhm.
physical location, even if it's just for a weekend and you're just having fun. But it's really good to connect with people at that level.
Yep.
Um,
How do you feel about those people that like organizations that are saying and demanding their employees come back to work? Like how do you feel about that?
I know I kind of have different view on that in the sense, I mean, I'm most of it I've been in healthcare, right?
Right?
And so you have to physically be there.
Yes.
And there are certain jobs that it just doesn't work remote. Like you absolutely have
Mhm.
to physically be there. And
I would
so,
be really upset if my bartender called it in.
well, right? Like you're like, and like
Manufacturing companies cannot function without people being on site. Those types of things. Totally understand. Construction, everything makes sense.
but even I think people do work better at some point, at some level, when they're physically in a space. Like there
Oh,
is nothing that can really replace. I haven't seen anything that really effectively replaces that. And so I don't. I mean, I would say like our board for the society
yep.
at Harvard Extension
Hmm.
School. Um, we work really well online,
We do.
but we're not
Yep.
we're not solving the world's problems, right? We're creating a fun activity and event for people, and I think that works really well like
Hmm.
this. But we're not doing this every day in, day out for 8 hours. I can see how there is a diminishing return the more it is, the harder, the more you have to work, the less benefit I think you get out of it.
Hmm.
So I can see that's why I think the remote or the having a hybrid is a great idea because it allows people to have autonomy, which I think autonomy is really good for creativity and to
Innovation.
own.
Yep.
It is, it's amazing. And I think every aspect of every company could use that. I think even in the healthcare field, I see how autonomy is amazing. People come up with these phenomenal ideas, but it's because they're allowed to have like some freedom in their thinking and how they're accomplishing tasks. So I like the idea of a hybrid situation. Even
Mhm.
in healthcare, I can see how there some roles could easily be done from home at times, and like letters that you're writing, insurance claims. Like
Sure.
there's so many things that can be done like remote as well. And I think that creates better job satisfaction. Like I said, I love to travel, I love to be out and about, and if I could work from Aspen, Colorado on a Thursday, Friday, and then that night go to like the belly up and go to a concert or go skiing on Saturday and Sunday, like that just makes me feel like I had a real vacation, even though I'm working all day Thursday, Friday.
Sure. I think, I mean, I would even I would go a little bit different. I think based on the role and the person that is taking on that role. I think one way or another, if I know people that have been working remote for 10 years, and if you ever ask them to go into the office, they quit, right? Like they are highly efficient, highly self-motivated and driven people that they do and can and have established those healthy boundaries. They do all of those things, but hybrid wouldn't even work for them, right? Or they live all the way across the country or in a different country than the home office or the next remote location that they could be able to go into the office for. Um, so, I mean, I would even say like a lot of the businesses that are challenging and demanding people to come back into work, I would say, depending on the role, I think that could be evaluated on a case by case basis, which really causes a lot of problems, which I know people have the us against them thing, but I feel like that happens anyway interdepartmentally within organizations. Sometimes it's us against them, but just kind of wrapping it up, I think that we are not going to see the end of this challenge or the benefits. We're not going to see the end of this conversation anytime soon. Don't you think?
Yeah, we're really not. But I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have, and it's
Absolutely.
worthwhile to figure it out, because I think there are phenomenal benefits,
Hmm.
and I think it's time to figure it out and not just think of it as a fly by night kind of thing. Like I think everybody thought, even as business leaders, thought as soon as COVID is over, we're all going to get back and be happy there.
Well, I mean,
But
when it
that's
first started, we thought in 2 weeks we were going to head back to the office.
exactly. And so now it's like really embracing and looking at how it can be different. And that could be also a benefit of being a manager. You know what I mean? I know there's that us versus them type of mentality, but it is a very different role being a secretary. The amount of stress that's on you as a secretary as there is on you as a leader in the company. There is just different challenges, and that is
They're both equally stressful. Understood. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So, again, just to kind of wrap up, I'm sure this conversation will continue as we bring on people as guests to our show. We get to talk about them because most of the people, like Heather mentioned, absolutely have had the opportunity to experience maybe a hybrid situation on one level or another, or they've been communicating with family via Zoom, or using a different platform. So, um, thank you again, Heather. This has been a great conversation for me to be able to hear, different perspectives. But I did want to remind everybody out there, please, if you're listening to us on Spotify, YouTube, or we have the Amazon as well. Uh, Please send us on a note on LinkedIn if you want to hear one of your topics, and we'd love to discuss what you guys have next to say. So, any last words, Heather?
no, you summed it up perfectly.
Thanks.
Nailed
All
it.
right. Well, thank you again, and we will see you guys next week. Have a good one.